Sure.
The optimal good at a macro level,
Mhm.
at the macro level, may include some people feeling bad, right? Like it's
Impossible.
possible, impossible. So,
Impossible.
and we're
That's a
saying
contradiction.
it's objectively good, right?
Yes, it's not utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a failure of morality because they
Okay.
say it is morally right, and they claim that's self-evident. It's not. First mistake. They say it's morally right for the majority to be pleased, even if the minority has to suffer.
Okay.
That is logically wrong. It's not self-evident. That's what they try to base all morality on in academia, and that's why they're all wrong, and they always will be wrong because they're trying to make something self-evident that is not. More good is more good is self-evident. That is a truism, but it's the only truism, and only a truism can be self-evident. But it's the only truism that actually has content in that, yeah, it'll feel more good when you make more good. And the more gooder you make it, the more gooder it'll feel.
All right,
Right?
let's use an example. Maybe it's not a good example, so pick it apart if need be and pick a better one. But
Sure.
the one that comes to mind is I have a son. He's 9 years old. Let's put aside anybody. We're past COVID somewhat, so hopefully this isn't as inflammatory. But
Mm.
if I give him a vaccination, whatever vaccine, the measles vaccine, chickenpox vaccine,
Yeah.
arguably there is some bad that is produced in that pain in his arm when he gets the shot. Maybe he even cries. But
I see.
there's the sensation of there's a greater good to it. Therefore, that is the right action. That is the optimal action to take. Let's assume it is. Maybe. How does that play into this? That there's some quote unquote bad being created in that scenario, but there's still good.
That's the perfect question. So, if the science says that, if the established science says that medical procedure is going to produce more good for the
Mhm.
duration, then yeah, do it. Unless there's something the science says is better to do.
Sure.
Right?
Let's
If
assume it
that's
is. Let's assume it's known to
yeah,
be that is the best
and right, like
option.
what else can you do about measles? That,
Yep.
that
Yep.
you gotta inoculate, right? You gotta do something like that. And it would be worse not to inoculate, not only for him or you said to his son, right?
Yep. Yep.
Not only for him, and that he's going to catch the measles, and everyone around him will catch the measles. It would. The evidence says that will be worse,
Mhm.
right? Now, also implicit in that question was how do you adjudicate short-term pain and
Mhm.
long-term gain? It's exactly how you do it. So as long as if it doesn't cause any memorable pain at the end, if you're not risking any memorable pain at the end for the individual, then that would be the optimal thing to do,
Still could be
insofar
optimal
as the
good.
evidence suggests that it is. And you're taking the maximal amount of safe time to adjudicate said evidence. So that's
See,
the second component.
that's where that gets interesting because if we extrapolate that out to the macro, right? I think that
Yes,
phrase you just said is so important and interesting. Of like, if that pain, I want to say it the way you just said it, but I can't remember. But also I'll rephrase it, but correct me. If that pain is worth it, is almost the concept, right? If that pain is justified
exactly,
to create the
exactly.
optimal good. If
Yep,
you look at that on a macro level, right? Let's get ugly, let's get dark, so let's get into it, right?
sure,
What if somebody were to say slavery or the Holocaust, as
sure.
horrible as it was, on
Yep.
the macro scale of the universe and humanity,
Mhm.
just like that shot, that was a worthy negative or bad because it's going to result in the optimal good. A, does that work? Is that what we're saying? And B, if it is, are we okay with that? Like, is that an acceptance that that could still be the optimal good?
The answer is luckily no, because
Okay.
there's absolutely no way that those terrible actions could ever make things better later on. It would be far too risky to try, right? This is why we cannot just grab people and strap them down on a table and feed them happy pills. They will say they're deliriously happy because we fed them happy pills,
Mm-hmm.
but we that risk to do so was not justified.
Mm.
This is still a travesty, right? Because we say what's good or bad, and we cannot force them to make a judgment it's good or bad. You can hope they like your souffle as much as you want. It doesn't mean they're going to actually judge it's tasty and it's good and they like it, and therefore it was optimal for them to have it. And that's not even the duration. That's when they're tasting it. But then whatever rotted their teeth, and later on they regret having it. You gotta factor the duration into that as well.
Mm.
So no, it's just lucky that it works out that you cannot risk terrible travesties or even minor travesties. You can't risk any negativity because any form of negativity at all pollutes the goodness entirely. If one person is harmed by making a freeway that serves a million people, we harmed one person and we did something unethical.
How's that reconciled back to the vaccine situation? Where I know it's a very different level of negative.
Because it only hurt them for a moment and they
Mm.
cried for 5 minutes and then they forgot about it and didn't even care.
Mm.
And the evidence would suggest that we could predict that's exactly what would happen.
Yes.
Now, in the Holocaust scenario, in the slavery scenario, we cannot in any way, the evidence cannot in any way predict that would make anything better in any way, shape, or form, especially for the people who were Holocausted or enslaved,
Yes.
who, of
Yes.
course, matter in this. There's no way you can just abstract them out of this, too, of course.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, I think this is where, because I think you're right. I think you said, it's 5,000 years or however people have been looking for these answers. The answer is there, right? As you said, and Plato had it, Buddha had it.
It's so simple, and that's why they can't see it.
Well, is it that, or is it, let's stick with the Plato view of it, right? Like, to me, what's coming to mind is like the idea of the Platonic idea of like the forms, I forget exactly what he called
Exactly.
it.
Eidos, or idea, and that's where the word ideal comes from. It's
Right,
a chief
exactly.
idea.
Is it that the tree example is the one that's most often used? I don't know if Plato actually used it, but like the perfect tree doesn't exist. It only exists in this realm of forms that he speaks of. But there are trees all around us, but nobody can actually look at one tree and say that's the perfect tree. The actual perfect tree is only a concept. Is it the same here, where yes, there is a concept of absolute goodness, right, or optimal goodness? We can understand that concept, but when we bring it into this realm, into reality, it actually does not exist, because it's too subjective. Who's making the determination that that's a warranted amount of negativity or warranted amount of suffering, or that this is good, right? Like, is there something to that makes it, although it is actually the answer, it does not apply in this world?